What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Behavioral Arts. My name is Spidey and I use my degree in sociology and psychology, my certifications in criminal interrogation and body language analysis, and over 10 years experience as an award-winning mentalist to teach people behavioral analysis and practical psychology on stages and television shows all over the world. There have been some very interesting recent developments in the Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni case. In her original complaint, she mentioned a scene that while they were filming, he displayed certain inappropriate behaviors that made her extremely uncomfortable. In response to this, Justin Baldoni's team released that footage. They said, here's a scene she was talking about, see for yourselves if what she's saying is legit. And the online community went nuts, trying to figure out if in this footage he's displaying any inappropriate behaviors, if she seems uncomfortable in any way, or was her complaint very embellished. Now, something must have happened because very recently, her legal team went back and amended the original complaint, changed the wording pertaining to this scene. In this video, we're gonna look at the leaked footage of that slow dance scene. We're gonna focus on body language, facial expressions, and word choice to see if it lines up with her initial complaint and her now amended complaint. We're also gonna get a very valuable legal perspective to understand why this footage was leaked, why she changed her complaint, and what each of their legal teams has to prove with this video for them to have a strong argument in court. But before we look at the legal stuff, let's start with the behaviors in the leaked footage. Now, just for context, for those who aren't up to date, the scene that we're about to see is one where Justin Baldoni's character and Blake Lively's character are slow dancing, and this was part of the courting process of the two characters in the movie. And she, in her original complaint, said that he was often breaking character, and it was him who was there in that scene as Justin, not as his character Ryle, and that he was often doing things that were not part of the story or part of the script and making her uncomfortable by getting a little too intimate as himself. So now let's look at the leaked footage to see what the behaviors actually suggest. Oh, and for regular viewers of the channel, stick around till the end of the video because I have a really important announcement. But for right now, let's take it from the top.
Like a couple cues of like they score. Just so everyone else around us is having a moment.
But is it as rambunctious as it was earlier on?
No, it's never going to be because we're in slow-mo.
And everybody gets? And playback. Background! Camera.
I may not always love you.
On the mark, so maybe
As long as there are stars above you.
Oh, okay.
You never.
They score!
God only knows what I need without you.
Okay, so right in the beginning, there's already so much going on. First and foremost, you'll notice before they even start filming the scene, Justin Baldoni is in director mindset, right? Because he has a very clear vision and he's saying, this is gonna be in slow-mo, so we're never gonna see that energy. But if we could have the people in the bar a couple of times celebrate some kind of victory around us. So he already has a very clear vision as a director. Now, what's extremely interesting is that he gives those directive notes before the assistant director says camera. Once she says camera, it cuts back to him and he's just dancing and he's looking at her. And it's unclear at this time if he's doing this as Justin or as Ryle, his character. But after the word camera is said, the first line, the first thing that's said is from Blake Lively. And what is it? It's a director note. She says, maybe we should stand back because we're not on our marks and they could see the light behind you. She said that. So it's really interesting that in her complaint, she's saying that he was talking to her not as his character, but as Justin Baldoni, when as soon as camera was called out, she's talking to him as Blake, trying to give a directive note. She started that, and he just followed her lead and explained, no, it's okay with the light behind me, it looks good, and so on and so on. Another really interesting thing about that moment is as he explains to her that it's nice for him to be in front of the light, and when he blocks it, he leans in and he gets really close to her ear, and he almost like whispers it to her very softly. And we might look at that and go, why did he say it like that? Why didn't he just tell her? And there's a very good reason for this. They're both very aware of the fact that we're only going to use the visuals of this, not what they're saying. So to get this shot, their body language needs to communicate, Ryle and Lily having this slow dance, but it's okay to be talking about other stuff as long as they could get the visuals across. This is very common in Hollywood productions. I can't tell you how often I filmed projects either as a consultant or in front of the camera, and when we were filming something that we knew only the visuals matter, we need to communicate something visually, we're talking about completely unrelated stuff, as long as we know the visuals get across. So in this case, he's following her lead. She started talking about, they're dancing. She started talking about where they should stand, and he just responded while still giving the camera the visuals that they need for this Lily and Ryle slow dance. Speaking of following her lead, immediately after he whispers in her ear, you'll notice she kind of backs up a little, and in that moment, we do see a couple of behaviors that could suggest a little bit of discomfort or uneasiness. So first you'll notice with her that her shoulder is a little bit up like this. And when we're feeling uncomfortable or defensive, the shoulders tend to go up like this to protect vital arteries. Now, when you're dancing and your arm is up, it might cause the shoulder to go up a little bit, but there's gonna be moments where that arm is up and the shoulders are more relaxed. Here it's a little tense. We're also seeing on her face this little bit of a faint smile, but there is tightness around the nose and around the mouth, and it doesn't look like a super relaxed smile. And finally, we do see that she is a little leaned back, and at first, he's a little more leaned towards her. But the moment he notices this kind of bit of a disengagement, notice what he does. He also disengages. So what we're seeing here is a dance, pun intended, where she's saying something, he's leaning in to whisper in her ear, she's backing up, he's backing up in response, and then what we see next is very important to this case, because she's saying that there were moments here where he kissed her on the neck, in this case he kissed her on the forehead, and that wasn't supposed to be part of the scene. However, there are a couple of really important subtleties just before that kiss on the forehead that give a lot of context to what's happening here and paint a pretty clear picture. But before we talk about those, and while we're on the subject of objectivity, here's a quick word about this week's sponsors. As you guys know, I don't do a lot of sponsored ads. That's because for me to talk to you about a product or service, I personally really have to believe in it. Otherwise, what's the point? But I'm really excited to talk to you guys about this week's sponsor, Ground News. Ground News is a website and app that compiles hundreds of news stories given any topic in one place and shows context about the publication's political leaning, reliability, and ownership. So for example, with this Justin Baldoni lawsuit, when I go search this on Ground News, it compiles hundreds of news stories, and I could scroll down and I can choose if I want to see stories from publications that lean left, right, or, as you know my preference, right down the middle. Give me the facts, and I don't want to be persuaded in either direction. And for every single article, you will see who owns it, and you see how reliable that source tends to be, all checked by third party, which really helps me see that bias and try to stay in the middle and look at this objectively. Now, Ground News is offering my viewers an amazing discount on their unlimited access Vantage plan, which is the plan that I use. And by using the QR code on your screen or the link ground.news/TBA, which I will also leave in the description and the top comment, you can get a 40% discount on that plan. This has been a huge help for me to navigate through the bias on media and sometimes even keep my own bias in check. And I know that a lot of the viewers are really going to appreciate a great way to do that. So use the QR code on your screen or the link in the description and top comment to get 40% off your membership to Ground News so they can help you navigate through the bias and manipulation of today's media. Okay, back to Justin and Blake. So you'll notice that yes, he did give her a kiss on the forehead, but let's really examine what happens before that moment. So he talked into her ear, she leaned back, he leaned back. Now notice what happens here. First and foremost, she turns her hand to hold his hand. Then she's looking at his face and she lowers her gaze, looks at his lips, then down on his neck, and we see that shoulder relax. So she kind of relaxes into him and she literally approaches her forehead and caresses his nose with her forehead. So we see her in this moment non-verbally giving into him, from that leaned out to this leaned in, continuing this kind of dance. And what does he do? With his forehead in front of him, he gives her a peck on the forehead. So here we have an actor who's in a scene. He's also in this moment exploring a character, which is odd because she said she wants him to be in this scene as Ryle, not as Justin. So he's trying to figure out what Ryle would do in this scene. So I think that it's very conceivable that with this back and forth, he would give her this peck on the forehead when she goes from here to turning her hand and holding his and relaxing into him. And the really big distinction that we really have to be mindful of at this point is the difference between her feeling uncomfortable and him objectively doing something to cause her to feel uncomfortable. Those are two different conversations, and a lot of people are having those conversations jumbled at the same time. So it's hard to invalidate someone, right? And say, no, you weren't feeling uncomfortable. We could look at some of this and go, it doesn't really seem behaviorally like she's uncomfortable, but maybe she's hiding it with some acting. That's possible. But it's a different conversation to look at him and go, I don't see that he's objectively doing anything to make her uncomfortable.
If you should ever leave me, though life would still go on, believe me, the world could show nothing to me. So what good would living do me? God only knows what I'd be without you.
We should be talking.
Ryan, go to the
More
bar, Ryan, go to the
romantic
bar.
if we're like dancing.
Okay, so here's where things get a little bit complicated. So we continue to see this kind of back and forth dance. And if you told me to point out things that prove that she's extremely comfortable in what we just saw, I'd be able to list some things. And if you told me to make a list of things that prove that she's uncomfortable, I'd be able to list some things. So let's talk about what those things are and talk about in context what it all means. So at first you'll notice she is a little more leaned back, but the shoulder's a little more relaxed and the smile on her face is significantly more relaxed. It's not that tight smile. And then we see a very quick, it looks like a very subtle biting of the bottom lip. It's not a big bite, it almost looks like the bottom lip just comes in and caresses those upper teeth as she's leaning back, and she's playing this back and forth kind of thing. Then she steps back and spins herself and spins him as well. And honestly, if you want to know if that's comfort or discomfort, take a coin and flip it. It could be either one. It could be playful and comfortable with someone, so you spin them around, or it could be a means to kind of put a little bit of distance there to make sure it stays playful and not more intimate. So your guess is as good as mine as to what that is, and in a second we'll talk about why it's difficult to analyze something like that. Then she comes back, she's closer to him now, and she puts her arm around him and pulls him very close like this. Then as her arm is disengaging, we see the hand behind his neck, and there's an interesting note there, behaviorally speaking. Usually with extreme comfort, the palm is in contact with the other person. This is how you know when two people are actually very close, there's a closeness there. It's when they're touching, it's not with the fingers, it's not with the fist or the back of the hand, it's the palm on the small of the back or on the neck. So we're not seeing that palm on the back of the head like this. It's closed, the fingers are in. So that's a little bit more tense there. And she brings it down to his chest and puts it against him like this. So this hand on the chest could be interpreted as just a position for the hand to be in while we're dancing. It could also be interpreted as a way that we have a fail-safe to put distance between us and someone else. The hand outwards, pretty much everywhere in the world, is a sign of negation. Anywhere in the world recognize this as trying to stop something or negate something or get someone's attention. So it's possible that it's that. Another thing that's really important to keep in mind throughout this analysis is that ultimately we are watching actors acting. And that creates two things that we have to be mindful of. First of all, this scene is about two people who are in the courting process, right? Even if he notices, a little bit of discomfort, she's pulling back a little, we're also seeing her bite that lip and smile and come in and then back up. So he could very well think that this is her exploring her character who's slowly falling for this guy. It's very reasonable to think that. And then the second thing we really have to keep in mind is that it is possible that she's feeling uncomfortable, but as an actress, she's making extra efforts to mask it to get the shot. So her going, work through it. If you're a little uncomfortable, work through it, because this is the scene that we need to do right now.
We should be talking.
Ryan, go to the bar,
More
Ryan, go to the
romantic
bar.
if we're like dancing. The moment you then give them the thing that they want to see. You know what I mean? So this is why
Penalty!
Almost good thing is also.
yeah. Makes you talking.
Oh, watch out, watch out.
They score again.
Oh, this person's drinking. I think this person's drinking ours.
You can butt in if you want.
Yeah.
So here we have her suggesting that they should be dancing and talking, saying that it would be more romantic. And let the audience wait. let's lead up to that kiss, which is why he says, you know, it's also nice to almost have that kiss, like not kiss, but almost have those kiss moments. And she goes, yeah. So she acknowledges that it's okay to have these almost intimate moments without it being intimate, but she would rather right now talk as they're dancing. So this sprouted two thoughts in my head. The first one is that, again, this is her talking as Blake, right? This is Blake giving Justin suggestions. She can't reasonably expect him to respond as Ryle, but then to be fair to her and see it from her angle, her insisting that they talk more could be her way of saying, I'm not as comfortable with intimacy in this moment. I'd rather this scene be, or at least I thought this scene was going to be more about talking and dancing. So we could see that, especially when at some point she spins and starts engaging with one of the extras. And this is something that I always look for when I'm trying to gauge stress or nervousness. And we see this in poker games a lot, or in all kinds of games of deception. And it's funny because I've said this on the channel before, and a lot of commenters have said, oh my God, I do that too, where in a game of deception, when someone is actually stressed by something, because they're being a little deceptive or because they're hiding something, they easily welcome outside distractions because it takes the tension away from all this. So you might see a poker player all of a sudden make jokes with the dealer or interact a lot more with a waitress, or you might see somebody in a game of deception all of a sudden very much accept an outside distraction. So we see this kind of thing a lot. So when I see this, her breaking away from the scene to kind of engage, hey, do you want to step in here? That can be her a little bit distancing from this intimacy that's taking place.
Right across again where you were.
Life will still go on, believe me.
The world could show nothing to me. So what good would living do me?
God only knows what I feel without you. Oh.
Okay, so a lot more of the same, this back and forth where he's playing with her hair and she's kind of opening up her neck like this to him. And then he goes to the other side, he says, let's see this. He leans in, there's a bit of intimacy there. And when he comes back from that, she smiles and gives in to him. So more of this back and forth, this playfulness that we're seeing. And look, behaviorally to me, it doesn't really seem like there's big discomfort there. But I don't want to be the guy to invalidate what she's saying. If she's saying she was uncomfortable, I don't want to be the guy to say, no, behaviorally, you don't seem uncomfortable, so you're lying. All I could say is, I'm not seeing that discomfort. And even if there was hints of it, again, as an actor, he might interpret that as that discomfort of the courting process, that push and pull, you know, that playful kind of pulling away a little bit. But again, if we ignore the side of this that's like us trying to figure out how she feels and say, okay, you might have felt uncomfortable and you're working through it, but if we look at objectively the way he's behaving, I don't think anybody can really look at this and objectively think that he has dark motives here. I don't think that that's something that's obvious at the very least. To the point where I feel like if she was uncomfortable, or if the scene was going away that she didn't think, if she said, guys, can we cut for a moment, and brought her managers in, said, I'd prefer having an intimacy coordinator, I didn't think this is the way it was going to be, I think that everybody there would be quite open to that.
No, I think it's more romantic.
We have no issue talking most of the time.
Yeah, and you're like, what are they saying?
I'll never know in slow motion.
You must know what they're saying.
You never.
Oh my gosh, we don't shut up.
And Emily and I have we have these moments where
Staring, you just stare.
Literally we've done it for like 5 minutes. it's like, I think you would find it terrifying.
We just literally look at each other and like
When I
time
found a sociopath.
and like time stops.
Yeah.
But that's just how it's been for us from the beginning.
No, we're like, oh my god, there's not enough time.
And they score again.
Yeah. You know, it's like, oh my god, I forgot to tell you something else.
No, I think that's cute. You guys are really cute.
I think it's more than cute.
They won the Stanley Cup.
I think it's amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And then let's just do one almost super close.
Yeah.
Can you guys frame up on Sebastian on you? Yep. We'll just do like our lips are right next to each other.
Yeah, gotcha.
But I think it should start talking.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, ready? Still rolling.
Don't give it to him.
And
They want it. Don't give it to
They
them.
score.
Just keep restraint.
Yeah.
Score.
Just do a little bit of restraint.
Ryan, come on back. And the couple by the bar walk towards us, cross. Who's that? No, no, your name, sorry. Ponytail lady.
And then
Cross this way. Cross this way. Take your day. Cross this way.
I feel so nosy.
I know. And my
noses.
and my nose is so big.
Yes, I was hoping that we could address this. It's not too late. Just gotta shut down. We gotta call an insurance month and just deal with that. And
Yeah.
then
Cut.
Okay, a lot going on there. So let's put aside the body language and facial expressions and focus on what's being said because there's a lot. So this has been a main focus of some of the things that she said because he's clearly talking here as Justin Baldoni because he's talking about him and his wife, Emily, and he's talking about her and her husband, Ryan Reynolds, which she brings up and says, I bet you guys talk a lot. But what's interesting is just before that, she was talking about how we should be talking and, get the audience to keep guessing, like, what are they talking about? So in acknowledging the audience, she's clearly talking as Blake. In fact, she's been talking as Blake this entire time. So I keep going back to how strange it is that she would say he was talking to her as Justin when she keeps talking to him as Blake. It's not like she was trying to be Lily and he's cutting that off to be Justin. That's really the way it was represented at first. That's not the way it seems at all. Furthermore, when he brings up Ryan Reynolds, she really doesn't seem to mind. She doesn't seem uncomfortable with it. She's not changing the subject. She's not not responding and trying to go back into the character of Lily. She addresses it. She acknowledges how they're always talking and, I forgot to tell you something and how that's their relationship. And then when he talks about his relationship with Emily, not only does she comment on that and talk about that and laugh about that, she also says, if that happened to her, she'd be like, oh my God, I found a sociopath. So, she calls him a sociopath for not talking to his partner. However, to be objective and look at this from her side a little bit more, we can look at this continuous attempt to say, let's talk. We should be talking as an attempt to not be super intimate in this moment, to not be close, to not be kissing her neck. But we're talking. We're still in that flirting, talking process. Let's dial it back a little bit. And then there's the comment about the nose. And at the very least, this shows us the kind of relationship that they had, which wasn't really represented in the initial complaint or in the lawsuit. If you read that lawsuit, it seems like she wasn't comfortable with him as a person and that he was imposing a lot of these different things. But here we're seeing her joke about his nose and the size of his nose. Yes, he's the one who makes the joke, but she runs with it and mocks him and she says, just kidding, and she's giggling. But we're seeing that there's a kind of relationship where they get to talk about things like that. I wonder if he made a physical comment about her, if that would also show up in the complaint in a very different light. I kind of think that it would. And that gives us a bit of insight as to why his team was like, here it is. If you guys want to see it, here it is. And why she changed the complaint. Because that initial complaint doesn't quite line up with what we're seeing here. So behaviorally, to me, it seems like we have an actor-director who's following the lead here of what's going on. She leans back, he leans back. And there are moments where it seems like he's improvising a little bit of intimacy as he's trying to explore this character. And I'm going to say something that goes against public opinion right now, that if she was uncomfortable with that, she's within her right to say, I didn't think this scene was going to be about intimacy, so I'd like to take pause and let's have a conversation about this. I think it's totally valid for her to feel that way if that's what's going on. Where I think it's not that valid is to misrepresent objectively the way he was behaving to make it seem like she was just trying to be professional and be Lily, and that he kept breaking character and subtly as Justin, he was trying to create these intimate moments. I don't think objectively that that's what we're seeing here. And that leads me to a big conclusion that I had from the moment I found out that he released this footage. In the fact that he was okay releasing this footage, we can deduce that he doesn't think that there are any problematic behaviors here. Even if we microanalyze and we go, oh my God, wait a second, I think he's doing that on purpose, or all these things, just the fact that he would release it himself and go, here you go, I'm okay with everyone seeing this, shows his thinking behind it, to where he feels genuinely that there's nothing incriminating for him in this footage. Otherwise, they just wouldn't have released it. All right, so I obviously had a lot of questions about the legal aspect of this leaked footage, the allegations, the change in the allegation. So I called one of my very good friends who you've seen on the channel many times before. She's one of my favorite legal analysts on YouTube. Welcome back to the channel, Alyte from Legal Bites.
Hey.
What's up? How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Super excited to jump into this with you. I know that you've been really kind of obsessed with this case as well, and I have a lot of questions for you.
All right. Yeah, I totally have been. Like a lot of people, I've been completely sucked into it.
Nice. So, Alita, let's start with a very basic but very important question. What was Blake Lively's original allegation when it comes to this scene or filming this scene? And why did Justin Baldoni's team release this footage? And what are they hoping to prove by releasing it? Walk us through all that in a legal sense.
So her initial allegation about this whole issue is originally one paragraph. And as you know, now she's amended her complaint. And what she alleges now is actually much more extensive than what she did before. Initially, she basically said something to the effect of, they were filming a slow dancing scene, and he improvised with all of this intimacy that didn't need to be there. They weren't supposed to be talking, but he kept talking and he was out of character. He broke character. He started like dragging his lips down her neck and, saying it smells so good. And basically, just the way that she writes it is like, essentially, she's just standing there trying to act. And he's the one that's just like using this as an excuse to be very aggressive and intimate in the moment. So his team decided to release the footage for this scene, of course, as everybody knows, and that's how we have that for the subject of this video and others. And the reason why they did that was so that the public could basically see, like, this is what actually happened. And it really doesn't line up with the way that she characterizes it in her original complaint. It looks like a very muddy scene for me personally. And so, in some respects, I thought it wasn't necessarily a smoking gun for Baldoni, but it certainly shows that the way that she characterized it was not accurate. And so that was very helpful to him. Now, the downside to doing that at such an early stage is Lively can do what she just did, which is amend the complaint to kind of conform to what we all know is out there.
So you make a very good point, Alita, in that the way it was represented as him like really trying to make her uncomfortable or doing these inappropriate things, I don't think we're seeing those elements. But if we get really technical about what she said he did, which is, kissed her neck, kissed her forehead, talked as himself, not Ryle, he did do those things. It's just the interpretation. The way it's being presented was very intense on her end. So where legally do we draw that line? Do we go, well, she has a point. He is doing those things, but he's not doing it in the way that she described it. So legally, where's that line?
So, when it comes to situations like this, we're really going to be looking forward towards what a jury is going to be thinking when they see these kinds of allegations, or the way that Lively and her attorneys are presenting these kinds of allegations about this event. How are they interpreting it? How are they arguing that everyone else should be interpreting this? So, if she says he broke character, well, okay, but you broke character first, and he seems like he was responding to you breaking character first, and it would be weird if he was super steady in being in character while you are talking as yourself. A jury is going to see that and kind of look back at her and go, "What are you talking about?"
So, Lena, you bring up a really good point, which leads me to my next question. You found that in her contract with this production, it specifically mentions that she doesn't want her counterparts talking to her about personal experience. It's mentioned in her contract. And she doesn't want any improvised intimacy that wasn't previously discussed, choreographed in the presence of an intimacy coordinator. That's in her contract. Now, this behavior speaks about the way people are allowed to behave with her, but doesn't necessarily mention the way she herself gets to behave. So technically, if she's talking about Ryan and he's talking about Emily, legally, could her lawyers go after that and saying that, no, she's allowed to do it, but he wasn't supposed to do it with her as per her contract?
So, yes, they can definitely do it, and they intend to do that here, to say that, if you look at the contract writer, which is their exhibit B to their first amended complaint, that, there are a number of things that other people on set are not allowed to do with Blake Lively. This contract writer doesn't restrict her from being able to do these things, which is very interesting. And it also doesn't have any sort of provisions as to what anyone else is supposed to do if she herself doesn't adhere to this kind of behavior.
That's exactly what I had in my head. Because what is he supposed to do? She goes, yeah, me and Ryan talk all the time, and him as Ryle is supposed to what? Who's Ryan? Who's I don't know Ryan. I'm Ryle. Hey, what like what is he supposed to do?
Yeah, which arguments can be made by Baldoni and by his team, to say that she was engaging in behavior that basically made adhering to that impossible. They're able to try to do that with regard to a contract. So and there are some instances here where there are some provisions in the contract writer that she actually does seem to do that in this particular scene. So, for example, she says there's to be no spontaneous improvising of any scenes involving intimate or sexual physical touching, simulated sex or nudity with respect to artist, scenes involving artists that involves kissing, depictions of intercourse or any other intimate physical touching must be contained in the screenplay. However, an argument can also be made that anyone approaching a scene like this for a romance movie that involves a slow dance, there is going to be some amount of touching. There is going to be some amount of intimacy when you understand the context of where this is supposed to fit in a movie like this, where you have two people that are falling in love. Otherwise, what do you expect to happen in a scene like this? So, there also can be that sort of back and forth argument. And on top of that, she seems to be the first person to improvise in this scene.
Right. So let's talk about that really quick. Does his interpretation play, like, is that a possible defense? So, for example, at some point, we saw in the behaviors where there was this kind of leaning back and then leaning towards, and she really looked at him and she approached her forehead to him and he played off of that. And that's where he kissed her on the forehead. So, is it a defense for him to go, I was in the moment, I was in the character, and she came close, she looked at my lips, she brought her forehead in. Even if she goes, no, that wasn't my intention, I was just dancing. Could it be him going, yeah, but I felt like in that moment you were creating an intimate scene? Is that a defense that works?
I think it could, and it really depends on how a jury's going to interpret it. Because like this is super highly fact specific, and any situation like that is for the jury to decide. And so, it's going to come down to really his testimony and her testimony and what the jury decides to pick up on and what they believe. So, it could also be that there are other scenes that have been filmed throughout this movie where they have some dialogue between them going in and out of character, but where she decides to just kind of get back into character, and how, both he and all of the other people around them, the cast and crew, understand that she's back in character.
Great point. Really, really good point. And it's funny because as you're talking, I'm realizing there's a bit of a conflict with what she's saying her issues were. Because on the one hand, she's saying, I didn't want him to be Justin. I wanted him to be Ryle. But then she's going, but I don't want him to be creepy and intimate. But that's what Ryle is. You're like, do you want him to be Ryle or do you not want him to be Ryle? Which one is it? So for me, even her complaint inherently has a conflict in there. Before we talk about the amended complaint, I have a few more questions about this. The first one is, and this is a very, very touchy subject, so we'll try to be delicate about this, but in a legal sense, is harassment an intention or a manifestation? In other words, and I think you kind of touched on this a little bit, but in other words, if it wasn't his intention at all, he's just exploring a character, but she felt a certain way, is that a crime?
So when we're talking about, is something a crime, or is there liability in something, we should be very intentional of what it is that we're comparing it to. What specific crime is alleged, what specific cause of action is alleged, because it's hard to say very generally whether or not something would or wouldn't be a crime without sort of tailoring it to something like that. So, for example, with Blake Lively, she's alleged intentional infliction of emotional distress. Intent is very, very important for that. Um, if someone caused emotional distress, but they didn't intend it, then you don't have a claim of IIED. So that's a material element, and she has to prove that for her to win on that specific claim. And there are other claims that are similar, where intent is very, very important.
Okay, so then that brings me to a very important question that I've had this entire time throughout this. Is character acting a legal defense? Because we know, for example, that sometimes in roles that require a lot of psychological transformation, there have been actors who on set have caused discomfort in counterparts. An example that comes to mind is when Jared Leto was playing the Joker in Suicide Squad, he sent the strangest gifts to other cast members. It's reported that he sent bullets to Will Smith, a rat to Margot Robbie, and a dead pig to another cast member. And these people were like, what is this? What the hell's going on? I think that's obviously way past a certain line. If I'm on set and someone's giving me dead animals, I would freak out. Like, I would lose it. Yeah. This is not there. But to what extent does someone trying to get into a role affecting their behaviors affect the legality of this? Is it a defense? Is it actionable? Is it something that she can go after?
I think it can be used as a defense. Whether or not it's successful is going to depend on the circumstances. To what extent is their behavior kind of going above and beyond what would be necessary to be in character, that, that people generally speaking would say would be in character? That's a little bit more of a nuanced inquiry, but a jury would probably decide that, how much leeway to give someone. But the context of the fact that they are filming, they know that the cameras are rolling, everyone else is acting as if all of this is going into the movie, that should lean away towards, him being able to use acting as a defense. And the thing is, I mean, he is the director, so he does have, ostensibly, at least on paper, control over what's going on set. However, she does have a lot of sway and a lot of star power on the set here. I mean, she's arguably the biggest known person on set for this movie. So, I mean, it seems, and she also is a producer. It seems a little bit strange that she wouldn't be able to, even where she herself thought that the audio was not going to be in the movie, but her body language was, that she could have at the same time said, "Don't do that. Hey, we're smiling. We're dancing. Don't do that. Lean back. I don't agree with that." You know what I mean? Like, you can still be physically acting and tell him like, "Hey, back off, mother effer."
Yeah. Or simply just say, guys, can we cut? Look, I'm not invalidating her feelings. I never would. But I don't understand what was to stop her from going, okay, hold on, stop. This isn't the way I saw this. Can we get an intimacy coordinator in here? Can I talk to some people? And as the director, I think he would have gone, yeah, of course, let's make sure everyone's comfortable with this. I like to think. I could be very wrong about that.
And even to the extent that she shows discomfort, though, while filming this, an argument can also be made that that can also still be in character. Because, when you have two people that are falling in love and you have a guy that makes a move and then she's, not really sure if, do I want it? Do I not? Like, there are things that happen. That's a back and forth, like like a dance that happens when two people are falling in love and they are sort of figuring out the boundaries of their intimacy and what they're comfortable with and what they're enjoying, and that kind of thing happens too. So, just looking at it, it is possible that all of that even is still acting.
100%. Let's talk about the amended complaint. And first of all, what are those amendments? And second, do you think that shows that she was being deceptive the first time around? And now she looks at it and goes, oh yeah, we can't do that anymore. We better change that. And is it a bad look? So because now her complaint has changed. It's no longer the same. So what does that change entail? And what are the details of those changes?
So she goes into much more detail about the scene in her amended complaint. So before, I said it was like one paragraph where she basically says like, "Hey, this wasn't in the script. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. Like, it doesn't, like, what he did doesn't conform at all to what was supposed to happen in this scene at all." And so now she's much more like detailed about it, and kind of is like sort of in a lot of respects like massaging the edges of like this video now that she herself has seen it and obviously everybody else has seen it. So in terms of what effect does this have in a case like this that is so public, where everybody's following so closely? There are really two courts here. There's the court of law and the court of public opinion. And the court of public opinion, it is incredibly damaging because everybody says, okay, now that we've seen the footage, you're changing your story. And in quite a substantive way. Now, in terms of the court of law, this is going to replace what she initially alleged about it. And so this is going to be the operative complaint. So, you know, the jury is going to have this now to compare the footage to. And now that is one of the strategic downsides to doing what Baldoni's lawyers did, which is to release this footage this early, is that Lively's attorneys can then go back and amend and sort of conform it to what the footage actually shows. Now, there are certain limits as to how much a plaintiff can amend their complaint, how many changes they can make. But this arguably probably does still fall within what is accepted, although I wouldn't be surprised if Baldoni's lawyers fired back with a motion to dismiss, you know, and part of their argument is like, you've made some seriously substantive changes that to the extent that this, you know, is now a sham pleading and whatnot. I don't know if that would be successful, but I wouldn't be surprised if they made the argument. Um, but you know, much more specifically about what exactly she alleges, you know, she refers to the fact that she calls him a sociopath or a psychopath or what have you, and says that it was like her trying to sort of like bring some levity to sort of like ease the tension or something. But at the same time, she also alleges in the amended complaint that she was trying to, you know, she was hoping to get through the scene in a way that maintained a professional boundary without antagonizing Mr. Baldoni. I don't know how you do that when you also call him a sociopath at the same time and make fun of his nose.
That's a really good point. And from a non-legal perspective, to me, it seems like all of this amendment is reactive. So as opposed to being proactive and saying, this is what happened, this is how I felt, this is what I remember experiencing, it's we're looking at this footage and we're really trying to put this lens on people to see it through this way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think part of it is because maybe Blake Lively didn't see this footage. Maybe she didn't realize that there was audio that was picked up, you know, when they actually filmed it, but they just cut it out for the movie. I'm not sure. She apparently had access to all of the footage and has her own cut and everything, so I'm not sure why she wouldn't have seen it. But maybe she just it like fell out of her head or something, the memory of it. But the other thing about it is that, you know, as you kind of just mentioned, the complaint here now sort of characterizes it in a very specific way. And in fact, they go so far as to bring in quotations from some other intimacy coordinator, not the one that actually worked on set, but one who commented on this footage publicly to sort of try to shoehorn in pseudo expert testimony about what it is that this footage shows, which is very strange, not something that really should be in this complaint because they haven't uh, laid any kind of foundation that she was even there or anything like that, other than that she happened to see it. So, what they're trying to do with the amended complaint with respect to this scene now is they're really trying to almost forcefully say, like, read this scene the way that we want you to. The problem with that, I mean, strategically, the problem for Lively's team is that when it comes down to trial, assuming we get there, a jury is going to actually watch this footage. And if Lively continues to characterize the footage in the way that they are doing it in the amended complaint, which my assumption is they would, why wouldn't they? If they get to that point, the jury then sees the footage for what it is. They're going to have their own analysis. They're not just going to adopt what it is that one attorney or another attorney says that they should adopt in terms of footage like this. So they're going to look at it just like anybody else, just like any viewer is looking at this. They're going to have their own perspective. Some people will say this favors Lively. Some people will say this favors Baldoni.
So let me ask you this one last question, because behaviorally it suggests one thing, legally I don't know if it suggests anything. So behaviorally, the fact that Justin Baldoni's response was, here's the footage, you guys decide for yourself, shows that at least to him, he doesn't believe there's anything incriminating in there. Because he's okay with it being out there. And this is something we look for very often. Not necessarily what we perceive, but what the person themselves perceives in what they're okay showing you and letting you in on. For example, if someone that is involved in interrogation says, yeah, sure, please come to my house, check out everything you want, take all the evidence you need, as opposed to, oh, I don't know, right now is not a good time, maybe you guys should come back later. You know, what are they willing to concede? So behaviorally, it's a great sign that he just said, yep, look, I have nothing to hide. Take a look. legally, does that apply, or is it just like, no, it really doesn't matter?
Well, the jury, I don't know that the jury is going to know that Baldoni like was so open about like, here you go. They'll just see it presented. So that may or may not be a factor.
Does it matter which side shows them the footage? Because I would imagine if I'm sitting in a jury box and Baldoni's lawyers are like, here's the footage for you to look at, I'd be like, okay, so they don't care. They don't care what's in this. Psychologically, it would have an effect. And if it was the other side showing it first, I'd be like, oh, okay, well, why didn't Baldoni's side show us this footage? I feel like there's a lot of psychology there. Does it matter?
Yes, that absolutely can be, because if one side is trying to keep certain evidence out, sometimes the jury might pick up on that. Or versus, the inverse, jury might also pick up on that as well. Now, in this particular case, the lawyers from both sides have made statements about the footage, after it was released publicly. Lively's attorneys also said, well, this of course supports Lively's case. You can see that it shows all this discomfort, blah, 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 blah. So like, I would imagine that they would try to also present the footage and say, see, this is evidence of him being intimate. That wasn't in the script, et cetera, et cetera. So, her being the plaintiff, he also has a case against her, which has been brought into this case. But my prediction probably would be that she would probably be regarded as the original plaintiff in this case. She probably would go first, in which case her lawyers would probably have the first opportunity to present it on her direct examination.
Alyte, I want to thank you so much for your time. I really
course.
appreciate it. We're both recent parents, so we know, I know your struggle. So I know that you taking that time to be here with us is extremely valuable. So a huge thank you. And I love this. I loved all the insight. Thank you so much.
And likewise, thanks so much for having me again.
All right, so there it was. We have the behavioral analysis, we have the legal analysis, and when it comes together, it seems like they're acknowledging that there was a misrepresentation, that initial complaint. That's why they had to change it. And now they're trying to take certain moments that are happening and say, okay, here's the interpretation because I was there and I know what happened and you should see it the same way. Okay, before we go, big announcement. So this is something that I talked about, but I want to give you guys all the details. So as of March 5th until May 19th, I will be in Las Vegas doing a residency at the Venetian Resort, 5 to 9 shows a week, depending on the week, as part of Shin Lim's show. Now, for those of you who don't know, Shin Lim is a world champion of magic. He's won America's Got Talent, and then he went on to win America's Got Talent Champions. He's fooled Penn and Teller a bunch of times. He's one of the most successful magicians alive, and he has a world-renowned show in Las Vegas at the Venetian, and I will be joining the show as host and mentalist. So throughout the show, I'll be doing my mentalism acts in a way that works with his show. It's really awesome. We've been working really hard on it. And I know that a lot of you already have tickets. So here's all the scoop on that. Anytime between March 5th and May 19th, if you go to Shin Lim's show, Limitless, at the Venetian, I will be on stage as part of the show and you'll get to see me in the show. Now, there are meet and greet tickets that you could buy. But what that means is you get to meet Shin after the show. If you're coming and you want to do a meet and greet and you want to hang out with me after the show, there's 2 ways you could do that. Get the meet and greet ticket, and either the day of, when you're there at the meet and greet, let one of the staff there know that you'd like to meet Spidey, or ahead of time, a couple of days, a week before you go on Facebook or Instagram to the DMs and send me a message and say, I will be there at this date and I'd love to get a chance to hang out with you after the show. My management will send me that and I will make sure to be at the meet and greet for those dates. Now, if you don't get official meet and greet tickets, you could still do that. You could still message us on Facebook or Instagram. My management will send that to me and I'll try my best, if I know some viewers are coming, to come out to the lobby and meet you guys there. But I can't promise that 100% because if they need me at the official meet and greet or there's something else we have to do for press or something, I can't always guarantee that, but I promise I'll try my best. Either way, always let us know you're coming because I would love to see some of the viewers and get to hang out at the show in Vegas. But the other thing that this means is that it's going to take away time from YouTube because as a lot of you know, I recently became a father. Lauren and the baby are gonna be coming with me, but only 3 weeks into my residency. So the next 2 weeks is all rehearsals, 24/7. Then I start on March 5th. So, for the first week or two, I gotta polish the acts and make sure everything works. Then a few weeks after that, Lauren's coming with the baby, and we have some family coming in as well. So that's gonna be a little hectic. So I really don't know what the schedule is gonna be like, especially because it's a busy season, and some weeks I'm gonna be doing 7 to 9 shows, and that's quite a bit. So I don't think I'll be able to upload weekly, especially, starting this week, because there's a lot going on for a little while. But who knows, maybe when I'm there, I'll find that the schedule is a little manageable, so I'll still find some time to film something, edit, and upload every now and then. Maybe we could even do some live streams. If I don't have time to edit, I could find some clips of something going on in the news. We could find a time, go live, do analysis with some interactions, the live chat. It all depends on the schedule, which right now, I don't know how it's gonna go. But after that, in the summer, I'll be right back to regular uploads, and I'll tell you guys all about Vegas. To the paid members of the channel, I'm so thankful for your encouragement and support. I'm so grateful that you're here. But obviously for the next couple of weeks or the next 3 months, I won't be as responsive in the comments as I normally am. So you might want to consider just taking a pause from the membership, and then in the summer, you can come right back. It won't affect your membership status. One last thing about the show, if you do want to come to Vegas and check it out, ideally, if possible, don't come in the first week or 2. Give me a little bit of time. I'm working on some awesome mentalism acts, a lot with persuasion and reading people and telling the audience what they're thinking. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I think you're gonna enjoy it a lot. But I need a week or 2 just to get comfortable up there and polish things up. So if you really wanna see it at its best, give it a little bit of time, come in April, May. I think it'll be really awesome then. And again, let us know. Let me know what you thought of this analysis. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was really great to get some insight from Alyte, and I will see you on the next one, whenever that is.